Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. How you doing, Matt?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm walking the dog and chewing on a pawpaw in the backyard, so can't complain too much.
There you go. And you were on the water today, so it really doesn't get a whole lot better than that.
No, I think that's what everybody should be doing in September, but I guess who am I to judge on that? It's definitely been a good solid couple of weeks here.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it looks like at least in the southeast we're dry, right? But we're getting the temperatures we want, and I mean, I'm hopeful we're going to get some rain. But I know we were talking before we started recording that it's becoming challenging because you've got kind of unusually low water for this time of year.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say unusually low. It's pretty seasonal, but it's been pretty statically low, and we really have basically no rain in the forecast. Sun every day for the next couple of weeks, with maybe a little exception here and there. But yeah, we could definitely use it, but we're trucking along. I'm not complaining too much.
Yeah, so I guess the big trick with no rain, it's not, better levels, no stain in the water either, but you were telling me it makes for killer bug fishing.
Yeah. So I mean, we all have our temps have nosedived a little bit. A couple of weeks ago, we were still in the low to mid 80s for water temps in the middle end of the day. And we've been starting out, we started this morning out at about 68 degrees, and we're getting up to like the low, maybe mid 70s, depending on where you are. But, and that's pretty chilly. That means that the mornings are a little bit cold. I mean, it was like 48 degrees when I left my house this morning. But like you said, sun on the water helps that. And the bug fishing has been real good, which is a good thing, because with that low and clear of water, it's pretty tough to sell them anything else in the middle of the day when the sun's on them.
Yeah. And I would imagine too, right? I guess, when there's not full blown sun, probably the bait fish bite's pretty decent, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talk to people about this just about every day for the last week or so. The two ways that I kind of look at cold, kind of shock fish is you can, and I reckon this goes for just about any time, but you can either go finesse, which in my case and smallmouth case is bug fishing, or you can go, just really aggressive, big poppers, making a lot of noise, that kind of thing. When the water's real low and slow, it just bores me to no end to just drag crayfish on the bottom, because you really are just fishing spots. If there's not a whole lot of current, it's not moving the fly down the river. You can pull that out in some pockets and wedges and stuff like that and make things happen. But for the most part, I might have somebody kind of test the waters with an aggressive approach, and then somebody stay on the bug train and see what happens. And it can be kind of 50-50 in the morning. I'm always just looking for an excuse to get back on the bug program this time of year. And like we were kind of talking about before, this late summer's been a little bit delayed, it seems like. The bugs, that I should say, the cicadas, are really what I'm talking about this time of year. They've been up in the trees for, better part of 2-3 months, just buzzing away. And normally it's within about a week of the 1st of September where I start seeing them actually on the water, dead or dying. And then, there'll be a couple of days, usually in early September, where they're spitting them up. The fish are spitting them up when you're, pulling them into the boat. And it's just real obvious that that's kind of a primary foraging event. But Those suckers are still up there. They're still buzzing. I've seen exactly one in a fish's mouth, and that was last Friday. So it helps for the finesse approach when things are still cold to have that pretty large forage base still there and coming, because that means that even though the water temp's pretty chilly, those bugs are actually going to be there on the surface, and they'll be looking for them. And the nice thing about the bug, it's fairly versatile in terms of performing really well when water temps are pretty high, because it's a really efficient way for them to feed. But it also works pretty well, particularly when that forage base is very present, when the water's a little on the cooler side, especially when the water's low and clear, because you really don't have to move it. And the sales pitch is basically the splat, and then the fish, kind of making sure it looks buggy and sucking it in. So I'll say this morning we kind of split the approaches 50-50 in the boat. And, first fish of the day was like an almost 19-inch fish that ate a bug in 68-degree water. So when it was 74, the evening before, and I think this morning was our coolest water temp in over, a couple of weeks. So take that for what it's worth, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Got it. And have you been able to do any muskie prospecting, or are you just doing muskie booking?
Muskie booking and muskie dreaming, I guess. It's man, whenever things start getting cooler, especially since I've been smallmouth fishing for like 8 months now, I start thinking about some of those other fall wintertime things. But man, I'm full up on smallmouth trip for the next maybe 3 to 4 weeks, with a couple of exceptions, and then we'll get on the muskie program. But I definitely have booked a lot of those days, and am continuing to book them. So definitely looking forward to switching gears here in 3-4 weeks to a month.
Well, there you go. Well, I've got a muskie question for you from Brenner, and he wanted to get your thoughts on fly color combos for the fall.
That is a good question, and I would define fall, or interpret fall, in terms of water conditions, because that's really probably where color selection is gonna matter, relative, more so than just the calendar season. But for the most part, fall is going to be low and clear potentially, unless the dream is to get a bunch of rain, in October sometime, and have the rivers fairly full, and that makes things better for selling fish, big flies. But for the most part, it's usually going to be pretty low and clear. If you have days with sun, which we usually have a lot of in October, because it's a pretty historically low rainfall month around here, unless we get a hurricane. I tend to go pretty natural. So that means, black or white are just, pretty year-round staple colors for me. And then when I say natural, I mean anything that imitates a sucker species pretty specifically, or pretty closely. And that, talking about hog suckers that are, brown, gold, black, tan, olive, that kind of color scheme. And then, if you have red horse or fall fish or something like that, you maybe work some like grays and tans and oranges and reds in there too. That's how I tend to run things. One thing that is worth thinking about is leaves, because that will absolutely be a factor in the month of October, and maybe early November, probably early November. If there's just a ton of leaves in the water, I sometimes think about like those blacks and whites. I see a little bit more leader time, just because they're not tan or yellow or orange or the color of all the leaves swirling around in the eddies and slack water spots. And you know, that'll help you maybe a little bit, and maybe the fish find those flies a little bit better too. So that's how I would think about it.
Got it. And, folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. You can email them to us or you can DM us on social media, whatever's easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some Articulate Fly swag. We're going to enter a drawing for some cool stuff from Matt at the end of the season. And Matt, before I let you go, and I think last time I was supposed to ask you if you've got all your show schedule figured out, right? So,
Yeah, that is true. You were, I believe, well, I know that I am not going to Doswell this year. It's a great show. I just have basically 2 weeks surrounding that weekend booked. And I may be headed to Cincinnati for a show that I have not been to, but I think it's potentially a good market for me. I know a few people up there, and they certainly get down with some warm water fishing. So I may be doing that one, and then that is really it. Otherwise, we're just hanging around and fishing and maybe sleeping a little bit.
Oh, there you go. That sounds horrible. I know that I know there are a lot of folks like the Tuck Fly Shop guys, and I know Ian and Charity Rudder go up to that Cincinnati show. So I know it's really a popular place for kind of Southwest Virginia, East Tennessee people to kind of pull people down in our neck of the woods.
It's not very far, and where I live and fish is really closer to a lot of other places, a lot of other states than kind of the key population centers in Virginia. I have several folks that come from Birmingham, Alabama, and as crazy as it sounds, that's about 4.5 to 5 hours from me. So there's other places to be explored for sure.
Yeah, well, there you go. And before I let you hop, you want to let folks know where they can find you so they can book you and fish with you?
Sure. Yeah, the website is mattreillyflyfishing.com, and there is my email, phone number on there. Social media channels, feel free to reach out however you feel best. And even if you just want to, pick my brain or talk about what you might potentially be interested in, it might take me a week to get back to you, but I will certainly send you several paragraphs of response probably.
Well, there you go. Well, listen, folks, I think if we get some water, I think we're going to have a really good trout season in the Southeast, and you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
Thanks, Marvin.